A wealthy man couldn't shake the image of a young woman eating her lunch under the heavy rain. Her words kept echoing in his mind. "Last month, sir," she had whispered, her voice barely audible beneath the dripping leaves, "I was eating inside. One of your important guests, I don't remember his name, said I was ruining his appetite with the smell of the poor." His thoughts were in turmoil. He couldn't help but wonder, had God sent this woman to change the way he saw the world? The morning arrived draped in a mantle of slate gray, the sky low and heavy, weeping a relentless, punishing rain upon the city of steel and glass. It was the kind of downpour that felt less like weather and more like a profound judgment, as if God were grieving a humanity that had long forgotten the simple virtue of compassion. Before the imposing, wrought iron gates of a magnificent modern villa, a figure sat huddled beneath the meager protection of an ancient oak tree. It was Maria, a woman whose simple, faded uniform hinted at a life spent in domestic service. She was soaked through, the cotton clinging to her thin frame, but her focus remained intently on the half-eaten bowl of rice held steady in her lap. She made no move to seek shelter under the mansion's vast eaves, not because she was unaware of the cold, but because of a deeper spiritual conviction. She believed she was unworthy to disturb the comfort of others. At that precise moment, a sleek, obsidian Mercedes pulled into the driveway. Richard Hale, the villa's owner, stepped out. He was a man carved from ambition, a titan of industry whose name was synonymous with ruthless success. For 40 years, Richard had lived by the gospel of the market. God helps those who help themselves, and money was the only genuine miracle in life. He saw the world in ledgers and assets, and his own soul was a fortified bank vault, impenetrable and immensely valuable to himself alone. He strode toward the mansion, already mentally rehearsing the brutal board meeting ahead. He barely glanced at the woman, but the rain was different today. It hit the wet pavement with such ferocity that the sound was a physical presence, and in a fleeting moment, as he fumbled for his keys, the torrent momentarily obscured his vision. When he blinked, the world snapped back into sharp, agonizing focus. He saw Maria, not as an employee, not as an inconvenience, but as a pure, solitary act of endurance. Her head was bowed, not in shame, but in quiet acceptance of the cold, metallic drumming on her clothes. A fissure, minuscule yet seismically significant, cracked open in the high, cold wall surrounding his heart. It was the first time in decades that a thought unrelated to profit or power had gained entry. She eats in the downpour, uncomplaining, he thought, while I seek refuge from a single drop. This was the seed of grace, planted not by a sermon or a prayer, but by the raw, unadorned suffering of another soul. Perhaps it was God who orchestrated that specific rain, a baptism not for her but for Richard, to wash clean his cynical eyes, forcing him to witness a fragile spirit enduring just beyond the gilded cage of his wealth. Richard couldn't work. All day the image of the woman under the oak tree, framed by the gray deluge, became a relentless silent siege against the fortress of his concentration. The board meeting, a crucial merger negotiation, became a cacophony of meaningless figures, while a small, persistent voice echoed in the silent chambers of his heart. "You have built castles for your flesh, Richard, but you have left your soul starving." He dismissed the feeling as fatigue, a momentary lapse of focus. But the next day, The obsession intensified. He called his old trusted housekeeper, Mrs. Green, into his study, a room of polished mahogany and detached power. "The woman, Maria, the one who cleans the west wing, where does she take her meals?" Richard's voice was clipped and professional, masking the turmoil within. Mrs. Green, accustomed to his dispassionate tone, explained softly, "She never uses the staff dining area, sir. She always carries her meal outside. She says she's afraid of causing a disturbance. She worries that the smell of lye and soap on her uniform might make the other staff, or God forbid your guests, uncomfortable." Richard dismissed Mrs. Green, but he didn't feel relief. He felt a sickening twist of dread. The shame wasn't Maria's. It was his. He had allowed an environment where a human being felt they had to apologize for the very scent of their honest labor. He waited, hidden behind the tall, lace-curtained windows of the library, until Maria settled under the oak the following afternoon. He then walked out, without the customary umbrella, stepping directly into the drizzle. Maria was startled, quickly trying to hide her bowl. "Mr. Hale, sir, I apologize. I'll be finished quickly." "No," Richard said, his voice surprisingly gentle. "Stay. Why here, Maria? The staff hall is warm and dry." Her smile was instant, practiced, and desperately fragile. "Oh, it's a lovely view of the garden, sir." Richard wasn't fooled. He pushed gently. "The truth, Maria. I deserve to hear it." Her eyes welled up, and the practiced mask shattered. A single tear cut a clean path down her cheek. "Last month, sir," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the remaining drip from the tree, "I was eating inside. One of your important clients, I didn't catch his name. He made a joke. He said I was spoiling the appetite with the smell of the poor. He didn't mean for me to hear, but I did. I realized then that my presence, my need for a chair and a table, was a bother." Maria wiped her tears with the back of her calloused hand, attempting to rebuild her dignity. "It's truly fine, Mr. Hale. It's better this way. I don't want to make anyone uncomfortable." In that moment, Richard felt not the weight of the rain, but the weight of heaven pressing down on him. It was a terrifying, absolute clarity. He wasn't just hearing Maria's words. He felt as though he were hearing the divine rebuke through her eyes. "If you cannot love the most humble among you, then you have never truly known me." He stumbled back, muttering an apology Maria couldn't hear, his face flushed with an emotion he hadn't experienced since childhood. Pure, consuming shame. It was the shame not of being caught in a fault, but of recognizing the spiritual bankruptcy of a life defined by indifference. Later that evening, the financial world erupted in a crisis that threatened to bankrupt 3 of his major holdings, a catastrophe that would normally consume his every waking thought. Yet the crisis felt pale, insignificant. His true disaster was the one unfolding within. The next morning, abandoning his driver and his schedule, Richard took his oldest car and navigated the unfamiliar labyrinth of the city's industrial backstreets, seeking Maria's address. He found her dwelling in a forgotten corner of the city, a dilapidated, rickety structure built precariously against a towering concrete wall. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and neglect. He knocked, and Maria opened the door, her surprise quickly shifting to alarm. "Mr. Hale, please, I can't let you see this." "I need to see it, Maria," Richard insisted gently, stepping across the threshold. The interior was dark. A worn cot, a small chipped stove, and one corner reserved as a sanctuary of study. Beneath the faint, flickering glow of a bare bulb, her son Elias was hunched over a collection of tattered textbooks. Elias looked up, a boy of about 10, his eyes unnervingly bright and focused. Richard's gaze swept the cracked plaster walls, pausing at the children's artwork. They weren't typical drawings of cars or superheroes. They were earnest, vibrant renderings of hospitals, of doctors in green scrubs, and one detailed portrait of his mother standing tall and proud in her cleaning uniform. "What do you draw, son?" Richard asked, kneeling down. The boy's face lit up. "I draw the future, sir. I draw where I'm going. I want to be a doctor, sir, to help my mother and to help people like her who work hard and get sick and don't have enough." Richard stood, completely motionless. The financial giant, the architect of empires, was reduced to silent awe by the pure, uncorrupted faith of this boy. It was a profound reminder. Within every impoverished soul, God places a sacred fire. That night, Richard Hale, the atheist of the balance sheet, found himself on his knees for the first time since he was a child. He didn't know the words, so he spoke from the broken core of his being. "Lord, if you can still hear the voice of a man who has lived only for himself, please teach me mercy. Teach me to use the abundance you gave me not for boastful display, but for the alleviation of suffering. Cleanse me of the coldness that money has instilled in my heart. Give me grace to make amends." The true drama arrived the next morning. Richard called Maria into his library, sitting her down on the opulent velvet chair opposite his desk. "Maria," he began, his voice thick with emotion, "I am offering you a new position, manager of household services. A living wage, and I have prepared a full scholarship from primary school through medical university for your son, Elias." Maria's immediate reaction was not joy, but a crippling fear. She pulled back. "Mr. Hale, I can't," she stammered, shaking her head. "I can't take charity. It's too much. All charity, sir, always comes with a price, a debt of obligation. I will work for you, but I must earn my way." Richard knew this proud refusal was a final, critical obstacle. He leaned forward, his eyes pleading. "Maria, listen to me closely. This is not charity. This is my penance. I am not offering you a gift. I am begging you to accept my restitution. If you refuse, you deny me the chance to purchase back my own soul from the darkness of my indifference. I need you to accept this, not as a favor to yourself, but as an act of grace to me, your employer. Please help me save myself." Her eyes, which had held back the tears under the torrent and under the scorn, finally broke. She covered her face and sobbed, a sound that was less mournful and more like the violent release of years of silent hardship. "You owe me nothing, Maria," Richard said, his own eyes wet. "It was God who sent you to remind me that man does not live by bread alone, but by the compassion he extends to his neighbor." Richard's transformation was a slow, deliberate miracle. The change began not just in his home, but in his corporate boardroom. He became less concerned with market share and more with the ethical treatment of his employees. He started listening, truly listening, not for weakness, but for need. He replaced the cold, analytical lens through which he viewed the world with one of sincere human curiosity. He reorganized his entire corporate foundation, dedicating a substantial portion of his wealth to funding medical scholarships for students from low-income families, all in the name of the Elias Hale Foundation, named after the boy who drew hospitals on cracked walls. Every morning, as Richard Hale walked past the great oak where Maria had once sheltered, he would pause. He would secretly make the sign of the cross, a gesture he hadn't performed in 4 decades, and whisper, "Thank you, Lord. Thank you for using the rain to wash the coldness from my heart." Years passed, marked by the quiet, steady progress of both Richard's soul and Elias's education. The climax arrived on a sun-drenched Saturday morning at the university's graduation ceremony. Elias, now a handsome, confident young man, walked across the stage to accept his medical doctor degree with highest honors. Richard Hale was there, not as a donor, but as an anonymous father figure in the back row, applauding louder than anyone, his eyes streaming with tears of pride and profound gratitude. After the ceremony, Maria found him. She looked radiant, finally free of the burden of quiet suffering. "Mr. Hale," she said, her voice filled with a lifetime of thanks, "I pray for you every day. You gave my son everything." Richard took her hands, his smile gentle and completely genuine. "No, Maria, you are wrong. I gave him opportunity, but God used you, the woman under the oak tree, to save me from myself. You taught me the truth of the Scripture. Wealth is not about how much you possess, but how much grace you extend." The storm was long over. The city was clean, bathed in golden light, and in the heart of a powerful man and a humble woman, the rains of redemption had finally ceased, leaving behind the enduring fertility of faith and compassion. God does not reside exclusively in the grandeur of the church, but in the heart of every person we encounter and in the kindness we choose to extend. Every meeting in life is potentially a divine appointment, an opportunity for God to teach us the true meaning of mercy and grace. That rainstorm did more than cleanse the streets. It washed clean a soul that had been cold for far too long.